talk about this, man. I got a lot of homies who are Jaguar fans, man. And before we start, you already know what we got to do. Duval. Come on, man. Like, I know y'all had to say it with me, man. So y'all know I love the Jaguars. It's always been the Jags. And I've lived in Jacksonville for pretty much my whole entire life. And y'all remember last year, around this time, I had the Jacksonville Jaguars winning the AFC South when pretty much everybody thought they were not going to be all that great. Now, even though I had to change my opinion like at the last minute, I still had these boys winning the AFC South. So, if you're a Jaguars fan, please don't take what I'm about to say in this segment as me hating on the Jaguars. Because if I was hating on the Jaguars, I would have been like 95% of people last season saying that the Jaguars were not going to be good. I would have never put myself on a limb and said that this team was going to win the AFC South. So I'm not hating on Jacksonville. But a lot of my friends who are Jags fans feel like this team has a really good chance at being Super Bowl contenders. And one of my homies I was talking about thinks that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to make it to the Super Bowl because of Trevor Lawrence, Doug Pederson, the addition of Calvin Ridley now that he's been reinstated. And listen, like, the offense is going to be great. Nobody's worried about that. My concern really is with this defense. You see, when you think about some of the best teams going into this season that are in the AFC, Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincinnati, hell, even the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets, like, all 5 of those teams have really complete rosters. They're just not offensive heavy. When you look at Jacksonville's defense, I don't think their defense is good enough, at least right now, to be able to compete for a Super Bowl or to at least be considered legit Super Bowl contenders. Did you see this defense last year? This defense was not all that great. Now, albeit they played really good in the second half during games when they came back against the Ravens and they came back against the Dallas Cowboys, and the defense really showed up late in the second half of the season, especially in really critical moments late in the game. But this defense was really turnover heavy. And plus, here's my question with this defense. Who's going to be the other consistent pass rusher lining up on the opposite side of Josh Allen? I mean, you drafted Trayvon Walker number 1 overall in last year's draft, but this guy was viewed as a developmental prospect. And yeah, he did have some good games and some flashes of what he could be if he reaches his full potential late last season, especially in that late win against Tennessee. But for Trayvon Walker, the jury's still out on this dude. Imagine if you just would have went ahead and drafted Aiden Hutchinson number 1 overall, which I don't really see what the difference is going to be in between Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker at all. It's just that with Aiden Hutchinson, you got a guy who's going to be good right away. And with Trayvon Walker, you was going to have a guy who was going to be good maybe within the next 3 to 4 years. And the thing with Trayvon Walker is you don't even know if he's going to be able to reach that potential. Imagine if Jacksonville had Aiden Hutchinson instead of Trayvon Walker right now. You see, like, sometimes these front office executives, they overthink things, and I think that Jacksonville, when you consider their track record with drafting pass rushers in the past, based off this same criteria that they drafted Trayvon Walker, it hasn't worked out. Tell me, what is Caleb Von Chasen doing right now? I don't hear nothing. Yeah, because he's been doing nothing. He's a bust. And then you end up doing rinse and repeat with the same formula, drafting Trayvon Walker number 1 overall. Now, I'm not saying that Trayvon Walker isn't going to work out, but we don't know if he is. You can make an argument and say that JT is going to be better, but there's also people who can make the argument and say that he's going to be a bust. He was a boom or bust player, and instead of just going ahead and drafting Aiden Hutchinson, you opted to jump the fence and try to go for the athleticism. Athleticism isn't everything, people. So we don't really know what the Jaguars are going to get when it comes to their pass rush. They lost 2 of their most productive guys when it came to getting pressure on the quarterback and free agency. DeJuan Smoot, he's gone. He had 5 sacks. You also lost Arden Key. You didn't re-sign him neither. You let him sign with your division rival, the Tennessee Titans. So where is the production when it comes to the pass rush going to come from that's already proven? That's my problem with Jacksonville. They don't have any proven pass rushers on this team outside of Josh Allen. I mean, you extended Ward Robertson Harris, but he's more of a good run stopper than he is a legitimate pass rusher. I mean, he can get pressure on the QB at times, but at most, this guy is a 2.5, 3 sack guy. This defense lived off turnovers last season. Now, this secondary isn't bad. You got Williams. You got Campbell in there. Okay, I like those guys a lot. Your secondary in the back end isn't too bad. And Andre Cisco. And you also got Rayshard Jenkins, who had a historical performance against the Dallas Cowboys. But, I mean, you're going to need some help from that pass rush. You got to remember, you're going against some of the best QBs in the NFL, people. You're not going to be able to beat Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow without having a legitimate pass rush. You have to be able to get pressure on the QB if you want to be able to win a Super Bowl. It's been a proven formula. And if you don't have a legitimate pass rush, then your secondary has to be locked down. And even though I think that Tyson, Campbell, and Williams are pretty good, they're not what I call elite shutdown corners. And I think most of us can agree with that. So if Jacksonville is going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl, the pass rush has to be there. And right now, I just don't see it. And I mean, you Jaguar fans can tell me, man, JT, Trayvon Walker is going to be that dude. And I'm not saying he isn't, but you don't know that. The Bengals have Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard. They got a really good pass rushing duo. The Ravens are super deep. They got Odafe Oweh. They have David Ojabo coming in, who didn't even play his rookie season. I mean, they're super loaded when it comes to their ability to get pressure on the quarterback. They're stacked up front. Their front seven is fantastic. And the back end of their secondary is really good. I mean, they lost Marcus Peters, but he was getting up there in age. You still have Marlon Humphrey, who was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL last season. So for Jacksonville, you compare them to some of the other teams who are considered Super Bowl contenders in the AFC. How do they stack up? They don't really stack up all that great defensively. Now, offensively, you're probably going to say, man, JT, doesn't matter how good we are at rushing the quarterback if we can end up outscoring everybody, and that is true. But what happens if you end up getting put in the situation that the Buffalo Bills were in when they lost to Kansas City in overtime a couple of years ago? And you can't get Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow off the field with 30 seconds left on the clock. You're going to get tore up and you're going to get your hearts broken. I'm not saying that the Jacksonville Jaguars are never going to be Super Bowl contenders, but I think they're a year away. It's just that there's still too much unknown when it comes to this defense. And if you want to be a Super Bowl caliber team in this conference, you have to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. The majority of the best quarterbacks reside in the AFC. And if you can't get pressure on them, you're going to lose. Joe Burrow, give this guy a clean pocket, and he is going to completely pick apart and dissect your defense. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes, even Aaron Rodgers, even Josh Allen. They got Von Miller. They just signed Leonard Floyd. They got Gregory Rousseau. They've been stacking pass rushers on top of pass rushers on top of pass rushers for how many years? Why do you think that? The recipe to getting out of the AFC is being able to stop the opposing QB, and the best way to do that is by getting pressure on them. Why do you think Chris Jones is getting so much money for Kansas City? Because he can get pressure on the QB. Pass rush is the name of the game in the AFC, people. And if you don't have it, then 8 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to make it out. I remember when the Jacksonville Jaguars went to the AFC Conference Championship years ago when they had Blake Bortles and that historically great defense. You may think about Jalen Ramsey and all the other good guys they had on that team in the secondary, but the nickname for that defense that year was what? Saxonville. I wonder why they called it Saxonville. I wonder why Jacksonville went as far as what they did. It wasn't just because they had Jalen Ramsey and a good secondary, but it also was because they had guys, multiple guys who could get consistent pressure on the QB. That's the name of the game. If you want to make it out of this conference, you have to have a legitimate pass rush, and you got to have multiple guys who can get pressure on the quarterback consistently. And if you don't have that, you're not going to make it out of the AFC. That's not really an opinion. That's kind of a fact. Pass rush is the name of the game, people. And if you don't have a legitimate one, you're going to have a hard time getting opposing offenses off the field. When you go to the AFC playoffs, right? It doesn't really matter if Jacksonville gets the 1 seed or not. You're still going to end up having to face either Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, or Lamar Jackson with Todd Monken, which is going to elevate him as a passer. So you're going to have to be able to get pressure on those guys. And those teams that go the furthest in the playoffs are the teams that have the best offensive lines and are good up front. Do you wonder why Philadelphia spends so much draft capital and so much money in free agency on the trenches? Because if you can't win up front, you're not going to go too far. So the Jaguars don't have a legitimate pass rush. They're not going to go too far in the playoffs. That's not really an opinion. That's kind of factual. It's been proven that if you don't have a great pass rush, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a hard time making it to the championship unless you have just a completely shut down secondary. And although I do like some of the players that the Jaguars have in the secondary, I don't think any of those guys are elite. Now, they could become elite. I think they're really good players right now. But you really need that pass rush. You wonder why Jacksonville had one of the worst third down defenses in the NFL last season? Because they couldn't get consistent pressure on the quarterback at times. If you got a good pass rush, you're going to be able to get off the field. And yes, I know that the Jaguars have a great offense, but so does Kansas City, so does Cincinnati, so does Baltimore. Jacksonville has the offense, but what's going to happen when you end up getting put in a situation when your offense is off the field and your defense is off the field and you need your defense to get a stop to win the game? Ask the Buffalo Bills how they feel about losing to Kansas City that year in overtime. They feel like if they had the ball first to start overtime, they win that game. But who was on the field? Their defense. And what happened? They couldn't stop Patrick Mahomes. They couldn't get that pass rush going. Why do you think they paid Von Miller so much money in free agency last year despite him being in his 30s? Because they need that game changer at pass rusher. If you can't get the opposing quarterback off the field in late game situations, you're going to lose. Now, if you're a Jaguars fan, okay, you can cross your fingers and hope that your offense is off the field and that Trevor Lawrence has the ball in his hands last. But is that always a good, legitimate option? I mean, your defense still is going to be put in a situation where they got to get stops. We saw Kansas City move the ball up and down the field against Jacksonville with pretty much no problems. The pass rush has to be there if you want to be able to win. The AFC conference is too good for you just to be overly reliant on your offense. You got to have that pass rush. You got to have that defense. You have to be able to get Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and whoever else off the field when the game is on the line. And you're not always going to have Trevor Lawrence with the ball in his hands with an opportunity to win the game. What's going to happen when you give Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow 45 seconds left and your offense isn't going to have a chance to get the ball back to win the game and you're banking on your defense to win and you don't have a legitimate pass rush? Those guys are going to end up going up, down the field, and they're going to end up winning the game. Your offense may just have 1 or 2 seconds left to throw a Hail Mary and pray for a miracle. I mean, Jacksonville has the offense needed to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, they did lose Jawan Taylor in free agency, but Kansas City overpaid for him. If that's what Jacksonville had to give up to keep Jawan Taylor, let him walk. You got Walker Little. He's pretty good. But my problem with Jacksonville is not the offense. I said that their offense is good enough to win the Super Bowl. My concern with Jacksonville is this defense. There's a reason why they say defense wins championships. You want to know something? When the LA Rams beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl, right, back during that 2021 season, Joe Burrow had the ball in his hands last, right? And they had Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. They had an explosive offense that it didn't matter the down the distance. They were still able to convert on third down no matter how far the distance was. But their offensive line costed them that game. You want to know what won that game for the LA Rams? You want to know what won that Super Bowl for the LA Rams? That pass rush with Aaron Donald and Von Miller, 2 of the best pass rushers that ever played this game. They were getting after Joe Burrow. They were teeing off. That's what won the game. You got to have a pass rush if you want to be able to compete for championships. And especially if you want to be able to make it out of the AFC conference this year. And for Jacksonville, I just don't think that their defense is at that level yet. Yeah, you got the offense. You may be able to outscore everybody, and you possibly could make it to the Super Bowl, depending on if Trevor Lawrence is put in a situation where he gets the ball last. But I don't know if the Jaguars have a Super Bowl caliber defense. You look at Baltimore, you look at Cincinnati, you look at Kansas City, the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets. All those teams are complete football teams. Jacksonville, you're banking on that offense being able to do everything for you and being able to overcompensate for some of the liabilities that you may have on defense. That's really why I feel the Jaguars are not Super Bowl contenders this year. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think the Jaguars are going to be a good team. I still think they are. I still think they should win at least 10 games or more this year and be a highly seeded team come playoff time. And they possibly could end up winning a playoff game or two, but I don't really see them making it out of the AFC. I just think that until they have a proven pass rush that can get consistent pressure on the QB, and you have another guy outside of Josh Allen, you're not going to be able to reach a Super Bowl until you get that. And maybe Trayvon Walker does become that guy. I'm not saying that he won't or he will. It's just that the jury's still out on him. He was a boom or bust player. But we'll see, man. But that pass rush, man, is a real big issue. And I don't really hear too many people talking about it. It's like you can ignore the defense all you want to and say that the offense is going to score a lot of points. But what happens when your offense is not on the field and you need your defense to get a stop against Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and you don't have a good pass rush? That's easy pickings for those boys, man.